And so this is one of the reasons why we decided to centralize some functions and some legislative powers. The division of powers, yes, it's another of the questions. I don't think this reform can reduce this important guarantee of our Constitution, because the division of powers is not involved in this reform. The judge power is independent, and we haven't changed nothing of this part of the Constitution. And at the same time, a guarantee of democracy for our country is represented by the President of the Republic, who has the powers to choose the Prime Minister and the ministers too, and to decide to hold the elections, and at the same time he can decide to not sign a law if he thinks that the law doesn't respect the Constitution. And so we have other forms of control and division of powers. But the Senate really hasn't had this role. Now, some politicians and some professors try to add this function to the Senate, but our Senate wasn't born for this reason, because the normality is that both chambers has the same majority, and both chambers vote confidence to the government. Now, the problem is that sometimes has happened that the two chambers has had different majorities, but it's the effect of different electoral law for different chambers and different voters, electors, and subjects who can be elected, because it's different the age limit, it's different the colleges to elect chamber and senate. But this is the pathology of the system, not the normality of the system. And so the Senate hasn't the role to control the chamber or to guarantee the chamber. And so I think the division of powers is another thing. It's not involved with the role of Senate, not in our system, because the perfect bicameralism has another objective, another goal to reach. But at the same time, I think that the possibility of citizens to choose the candidates for Senate at the moment of the regional election can guarantee, as a sort of a direct election, the democracy in our country, because the regional councils has just the role to confirm what citizens have chosen. And so I don't think we have less democracy for that reason. And I respect and I think that Professor Luciani is one of the most prepared professor of Constitution that we have in Italy, and so we have discussed a lot about our constitutional reforms, and really he supports our constitutional reforms. But for his affirmation about the importance of the legislative process to be not so fast, I don't agree with him really, because I think that one or the cause of our stagnation for some years is also the legislative process, not only the legislative process. Of course, politicians have their responsibilities, but I think also the legislative process doesn't help. For example, sometimes, often really, we have to pay the European sanzioni because we are late to adopt the European legislation also in our country. But often the problem of our delays is the legislative process, and so I think we have to go faster also in Parliament, because yes, you can imagine that some law needs more time, but I think that sometimes my colleagues don't pay attention because they know that there is another chamber in which we can change if we feel something. But if you haven't these possibilities, maybe you can try to be more carefully at the first round, I think, because I don't think that other country in which there is just one chamber can't have good laws or can't be able to be a good legislative process. And so I don't think the solution is necessary the second chamber, because one chamber is not enough to have good laws. And for the question about the relationship between Italy and Europe, I think you have made two different questions, because the questions of Professor Coricelli is more political, I can imagine, maybe. No, because it's more involved with esatto, l'agenda respect the European challenges and the European challenges of reform also for European institutions. And I don't think Europe will be the new Senate, because we have the opposite problem in Europe. In Europe, the Parliament decides quickly and is well organized, but we have a very involved process by citizens. And so I think we have to change a lot also in Europe, but to have a process of more strict relationship between citizens and representatives in Europe, because in Italy we feel Europe far, but we are Europe. Europe is in Rome, is in Florence, is in our places. It's not another place. We are Europe, and so we have to try to feel more European, to face new challenges, but with more representatives institutions. And I think the problem is, maybe you are younger than me, maybe you don't agree, I don't know which is your idea of Europe, but for example, for my generation, I think Europe is not seen as a solution of their problems. And it's strange, because we have had a great opportunity to know Europe, to know other European, to have Erasmus, to have the possibility to travel in Europe without limits, and I think we are lucky. At the same time, instead of this, we don't feel really European, because Europe is not the dream, it's not the solution of our problem as it has been for our parents or grandparents. And I think we have to find again that spirit, to rebuild Europe. And I think Europe is the solution. Europe is the answer. Europe could be the dream, but just if we are able to make again Europe as a solution, as a dream. And this is the challenge for our government and for the other governments in Europe, because alone we can't obtain results. This morning we have participated to another meeting for OCSE, OECD, and we have discussed about climate change, female role, migrants, and economic growth. It's impossible to find a unique solution if you think in terms of Italy, France, Germany. But we can build this new approach to Europe just if Europe understands that it has to change. And for the legislative field, we have imagined a central role for the of course, the Senate can't be the only chamber to have responsibility for the European legislation. This was a proposal by senators to have just for the Senate these functions. But we think it's not a right system, because the chamber, which is connected to government by confidence, has to indicate the main lines and the objectives for Europe, not only the Senate. And so both chambers will have these functions.